Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of Paulz Podz. It's your favorite podcast host, DJ elPablo. Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Paulz Podz. And this is Japa Syndrome Part 2. The title of this episode is When You Eventually Japa. But that's actually not the central focus of what we're about to do right now. But first and foremost, Japa syndrome is a never-ending phenomenon. And if you want to know more about it, then go and listen to the intro, like the part 1 that I did in the previous episode. But it is quickly escalating, and I took some time off to kind of like see what the trends are and see what is really happening in the world of immigration, migration, emigration, and all of these terminologies. But what I can tell you is that it's becoming, or it's escalating at a massive rate in Nigeria. And the stats are there for all to see. I mean, skilled workers are massively seeking better opportunities and higher pay in developed countries. So the most popular countries that Nigerians move to include England, or the UK, and all the other countries that are in the UK, and the US and Canada. Also, other European countries are included in this list as well. And if I'm going to go into details to explain or to list out this or highlight these countries, we're not going to leave here. But then, some of the things I have pondered over and I have kind of experienced over the years is that when you are planning to emigrate, there are certain questions you need to ask yourself and really convict yourself as to making the decision. I recently watched a video on YouTube where a content creator was talking about people who had eventually decided to leave Nigeria to seek greener pastures, and after a couple of years they've struggled, they've hustled hard, and they found out that they would rather go back, but they are scared of going back because of the fact that they don't want to be ridiculed. I'll give you an example. I myself went to the UK for 2 years to study, and back then they don't give, or they were not offering post-study visas or post-study permit. So what happened? I went there, I stayed there, and after my studies and I think a couple of months, like 4 or 5 months, I went back to Nigeria. All my peers and all my friends and all the people that I knew that I left started asking, oh, why didn't you stay? Oh, why didn't you hide? Or why didn't you just elope or something? I saw a couple of people do a couple of shady things. Some did some genuine stuff. But the thing is, I didn't want to find myself in situations where I would be hiding. I was presented with several opportunities to do some shady stuff, but I was like, no, I'm not cut off for all that stress. It might be good for you. Some people might like that. It might be their jam. But for me, it wasn't what I was cut off for. So, I came back and I got told oh, why are you being a Jew? Why are you being so much of a, what will I say? Why are you being weak? Why didn't you just make a decision and stay? Why did you come back? Well, I kept telling them, you know what? I came back because I don't like stress. I don't like to worry. If I come back to Nigeria and I find a job, fine. If I don't find a job, we'll find another way to make ends meet. So, and eventually I stayed in Nigeria, worked for a couple of years before I moved again. So when you're planning to leave, there are certain questions you ask yourself, and you really need to convict yourself as to making this decision. First question you should ask yourself is when, which means you should plan and know what you're trying to do, make some research and all that. But the first question is, when do you want to leave? So set a timeline, right? So the questions are not in order, but there are a lot of W's and H questions. But when do you want to leave, right? So it's okay. For example, this is 2024. It's like, okay, by the end of 2025, I'd have left. So that's a timeline, right? If you want to drill down to the specifics, you could say, oh, by December 2025, I've left. So what do? Set a timeline, do your research, and align all your searches to that timeline. Then you say, okay, what are the things I'm going to do? What do I need to put in place to ensure that this timeline aligns, right? And sometimes I would also like to give examples of myself. And in 2018, I kind of set a timeline for myself that, oh, by the end of 2018, I should have left. Yeah, things were a little bit, I would say it was the first tenure of President Buhari. So I was like, things are not, it was the year before the election. So it wasn't as, what would I say? Maybe as tough. It was tough, but things were getting bad, as the case may be. So, I set a timeline for myself, and this was as of March 2018. In 2017, I started feeding myself with the idea of leaving. But in March 2018, I decided, you know what? And I also had, advice from friends who had already left, and they're telling me, about the processes. And I was like, oh, at the right time, I would leave and all of that. So these were the things that, I considered before making that move. And then after I set that timeline, say, okay, by December 2018, I would have left. That's the timeline. So, or I would have, actually what I said was by December 2018, I would have started the process. I would have gone so far in the process. So November, December, which means I would have applied. That's what it means. So I set the timeline and I started to put things in place, started to find out or research or, try to find things that will align to whatever that I, wanted to do with regards to immigration or leaving. So the first W is when, right? The next one is what pathway. So what pathway are you going to use, or what pathway are you using, or what channel are you using to immigrate or to move, as the case may be, for lack of a more complex word. So pathway. So you need to research immigration pathways, right? Immigration pathways for each country, and what are the requirements, or if you're going as a result of or you want to go through study, you want to go through permanent residency, you want to go through dependency. So more importantly, like you want to go as a dependent. These are ways, or you want to go for work, right? So through getting a work permit and all of that. These are things you should search. Most countries have these things outlined in their website. So what pathway are you using? Canada, for example, has multiple pathways that people need to, or that people don't even know about. I had a conversation with somebody recently about pathways and all of that, and they were not spoiled for choices. So I had to suggest one of the pathways which would lead them to us going to one of the prairie provinces in Canada. And they were like, no, we're not going to go there. I don't want to go there. I'm going to be lonely there, blah, 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 blah. But you want to leave, right? So what pathway do you want to use to move, right? These are the things that you should consider. And then once you found out that particular pathway and it aligns with your plans, then you start to write down things or find out things that are around that. For example, for me, I was moving through the pathway of, the first time I moved to the UK, it was a pathway of study, right? So found out everything, applied, got the admission, and started to put things in place, right, to move. Now it's a lot tougher to go to the UK, and it's even tougher to go to places like Canada and probably the United States, right, because of strict immigration rules and stuff. So what pathway? Know that pathway, stick with it, plan towards it, and start moving and aligning yourself towards it. And then the next W, which is not in order, is where are you going, right? Because it's very important that you know where you're going. Coming back to the pathway question you should ask yourself with regards to your plan. One of the things that I always advise people against is using the pathway of tourist visas. Using the pathway of tourist visas to go to countries and to find out, to use that as a means to Japa, in quotes. It's a very, 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 very difficult way to live. And I've heard stories of people who left Nigeria on tourist visas to Canada, and they found themselves stuck, right, without being able to work, without being able to convert their visas, without being able to find a place to live, and then they end up like sleeping on the streets. Some have died and all whatnot. So pathways are very important, but steer clear of visitor's visa unless you're just coming properly for a visit. So basically, people have got stuck. They've looked for a job. Unless you want to start doing some kind of job some kind of odd jobs that are not even like enough to pay your bills, right? You need to decide, this is what I want to do, and stick with it. So steer clear. I've heard of situations where some of these agents have advised people to take the tourist route and then promise them heaven and earth, saying, oh, basically when you go there you can easily convert your visa and then all of that, and then it leads you down a dark path that you cannot escape or something. You get stuck for a long time, and obviously the visa rules are 6 months at a time. So I don't see any reason why you should take that path and then go stay in a country for 6 months without being able to do anything, or being able to work, or being able to just make ends meet. Because things are tough back in Nigeria and all of that, but then you need to consider so many things before you even make that move. So pathway is important, and steer clear of those agents that promise you paradise when you're going to literally suffer. Steer clear of visitor's visa. As to where, you need to know which country you're going to and what the requirements are and all of that. And the where can be in two phases. So I'm just like off the top of my head, the where can be in two phases. The first phase is the where you're going. So which country are you going to? Right? What are the requirements? What are the prospects there? What do you think is obtainable for you there? How can you navigate through life there? What's the economic situation in the country? What are the job prospects in the country and all of that? If possible, what is the ranking of the school you're going to, and cost of living, standard of living, what the cities are like, which particular city you're going to. That's one of the aspects of the where. Another aspect of the where is when you eventually get there, where are you going to stay? At least for the first couple of months, right? Where are you going to stay? Where are you going to live? Do you have family there? Do you have a friend there that can host you for a couple of months before you eventually find your feet? So these are things you need to consider. Where, right? So like I said, again, the where is in two phases. The first phase is what country, what city, what state, what province, what place, where, what town, what are the job prospects in that where that you're going. And then the next place is the where, like when you eventually get there, like where are you going to stay? And then if I'm to go into details, I would also give so many examples. There's so many people that have moved to different countries and they've already found accommodation before they left. When I moved to the UK back in the day, back in 2013, I had my accommodation sorted out for a whole year, right? I had my accommodation sorted out for a whole year. What did I do? When I went there, I knew where I was going to. I was picked up at the airport through, I think the school arranged a bus for us to land on a particular day, I think 18th September 2013. So when we landed, the school took us straight from the airport to the school premises. I remember on the street, they dropped us just by the school, and then they had somebody from the student union take us to and student services take us to our places where we found accommodation, because the school provides such an avenue for you to book your accommodation for at least a year. So I think we were paying weekly then, so I paid for at least, I think, 48 or 52 weeks or thereabout, which is about a year. So it's pretty much straightforward, right? So I had accommodation, I went there, and it was easy to settle in, and then I started to find my way around and all of that. So where? The next is how. So you found out when you're going, or you've set a timeline for when you're going. You found out what pathway you're going to go through, and then you found out where you're going. Now, how do you want to get there? So obviously you found the requirements. How do you want to get there? How do you want to navigate your way to that place? We're talking booking flight tickets. We're talking about going through like the whole process. For the UK, it depends on what pathway you're going to the UK. Most people move to the UK to study, right? Or others move to the UK to work. And the US as well. Most people move to the US to study or to work, and all of that. So how do you want to get there, right? Have you had some money saved? Back then, I mean, even in 2018, as I was talking about earlier, I started working towards the trip, because I started saving every dime, every event that I hosted, every event that I played at. I was saving money towards the trip, right? And that was the plan, because I set my mind on what I wanted to do, and I went for it. So how do you want to get there? What are the requirements, immigration requirements? I'll give you the example of Canada, for example, right? Okay, you want to go as a permanent resident. What are the requirements? Do I need to write IELTS? Do I need to do a credential evaluation? Do I need to gather my documents? What about work experience? What about my age? What about the NOC code that is required for the the immigration pathway that I want to use? And how does it align? And what about how my experience aligns with what the requirements are according to the IRCC website? So these are the things that you need to the house, right? You could at that time also watched videos of people who already lived there. I'm not talking about like people who just got there. I'm talking about people who had lived there and eventually got to where they needed to be, which could probably be, or they came in through work and then eventually became permanent residents, or they came in through school and they eventually got work permit, and then from work permit they became permanent residents, or they came as permanent residents and they got to become citizens. So I just watch all these videos and hear the perspective. I won't take everything they've said hook, line, and sinker, but the most important thing is get the information that is required to be able to achieve what I need to achieve. And then read the legitimate information from the IRCC website. Same as the uk.gov website or the US website, right? Or even any of the European websites, the European Union website. These information are laid out there. So how? Find out the pathway. I got a small notebook back in the day, and then I wrote down everything I needed to do, every step. And any one I did, I ticked. Oh, what does it require? Does it require a police report? Does it require for me to go and do medical and all of these things? They were very important to my journey to moving, right? Next would be who. So there are two aspects to this who, but I'm going to talk about the first who, which is who are you going with? Who are you going with? So the first one is, who are you going with? Right? And most people probably go alone. Others go with their spouses. And this one takes us down a path that I've read so many stories online about people who had gone to different countries. One of them went to the UK with her spouse and got there. No, so this time around is the reverse. So he went to the UK with his spouse as the dependent, and she got there and they divorced. They were married, got there, divorced, and she went on to marry someone else or live with someone else or something. So who are you going with? Who you're going with is very important to your immigration too. Unless you're going alone and then eventually figure out who your spouse is going to be in that country. Who you're going with is very important. It's as important as who you're getting married to, right? So your choice of a spouse is as important as your immigration to the country. So who are you going with? Who are you going to the country with to settle, right? Because the person has to be in alignment with your plan. The person has to be in alignment with the general plan, because I'm saying your plan because as the man, you should be able to be planning ahead. We're talking, and I've overstretched this topic about planning. If you follow the episode, you will see that I talk more about planning when I talk about the P's. So it is very important that you have a plan, and these plans need to be aligned to by your partner or by your wife, as the case may be. If it's the woman that is the lead applicant, if it's the woman that's the lead applicant, there has to be a plan, because you don't want to get to a situation where I've heard stories of guys who moved with their family and the wife kicked them out. So many of those stories floating about and trending every day. So it's very important that you know who you're going with. And then the next question, which is, because if I was to talk about the who, we're gonna sleep on this topic and spend loads of time talking about it because of the conundrum of marriage and all of that. Because the who, like I said, is as important, and you need to understand what the immigration laws states about going with your spouse or going with your partner, as the case may be. So the who is important. The next is, who are you staying with? For example, for people who are going to countries to study, as the case may be, what do? You need to at least know someone in the city. If not, you need to know someone in the next city or not too far from where you're going, so that you can actually have an emergency contact. Even when I moved to the UK, I moved with my sister. She was in another city, which was about an hour train ride, right? And I was in Cambridge, right? So I had her as an emergency contact, even though she was too far away. But I also moved with friends. I went with some of my friends who are still my friends. One of my friends who I moved with at the time, who is still my friend to this day. I went with him, and he was already even there before I got there. And when I got there, he became one of my contacts. Same thing. As I moved now, he's still my contact, one of my contacts, right? Even as my wife is, she's my emergency contact. My brother is my emergency contact as well. And then my other friends who also got here. So it's all very important who you are staying with, right? If I was to go into details as to my first couple of months in this country, you would understand what I mean by who you are staying with. So who you are staying with is very important as well. Who you're staying with could also be your spouse, and who you're staying with could also be your friend. So you need to know these things. You need to have those kinds of conversations about what the plan is. For example, how long are you going to stay with this person so you don't become a burden, because the person pays rent. And the rent system is not the way it is in Nigeria. In Nigeria, you have to pay rent yearly, right? So it's kind of less expensive. Well, attributed to the standard of living, kind of less expensive to pay rent yearly. But in countries like Canada, the UK, you pay rent monthly. So whatever you work for is what you're going to use to pay rent. So these are things very important. So you don't want to be a burden to someone. So you have to have that conversation. You have the conversation. Oh, okay. First and foremost, let's stay for a month. Then you put in the work to find the job that you're looking for to make ends meet while you go to school and all of that. Or find student accommodation in the school, or find partners to share accommodation with. So these are the things that you need when you eventually Japa, when you eventually leave Nigeria, right? But this is me kind of like giving you an advice, right? But if I was to go, which will eventually be part 3, if I was to go into explaining more about some of the things or the challenges of Japaing or of leaving Nigeria, of living in another country, you will probably, get a sense of what I mean and why I started this mini series. So, like I said, when you want to leave, what pathway, where you're going, how to go about it, how you're going, who you're going with, and who you're staying with. These are very key questions and aspects to being able to leave Nigeria and live in a country, so in a new country. So these are the things, and I just want to thank you for listening all through this episode. This is Japa Syndrome Part 2. We're probably gonna have Japa Syndrome Part 3. One of the aspects of that conversation is the different cultures and challenges and experiences of living in different countries. I've lived in the UK, Canada, Nigeria, and I can tell you about my experience and all of that. So thank you very much for listening, and I really appreciate you. And please do give this a like, a share, and a subscribe to the channel so that we can get this community growing and learning off of each other. If you have any questions, pop them in the comment sections and tell me what you think about this episode in the comment section as well. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you for listening and have a great one.
Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey today on Paulz Podz. We hope you found valuable insight and inspiration that resonates with your quest for meaning and purpose. But our journey doesn't end here. To stay connected with us and be a part of our vibrant community, make sure to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, or X as the case may be, and Facebook at Paulz Podz. Further details can be found in our Linktree site. Also, share the wisdom you've gained from this episode with your friends and family. Together, we can inspire and empower more people to embark on their own path towards a life filled with meaning and purpose. If you've been profoundly moved by our discussions and would like to support the podcast, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page. Your support enables us to continue bringing you thought-provoking content and explore even deeper depths of the spiritual and human experience. And finally, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Paulz Podz on your favorite podcast platform so you never have to miss an episode. Your continued presence and engagement mean the world to us. Until next time, keep seeking, keep sharing, and keep supporting each other on this remarkable journey. This is Paulz Podcast, signing off. God bless your heart. And remember to always seek true meaning to life and live it.